My name is Mitch Benner, and we started this podcast to remove the stigma around sobriety from addiction.
My name is Aaron Nelson. Through our stories and the stories of our guests, we hope to help you find a new path. Welcome back, friends. We are at episode 16 of Shattered Darkness. Thank you so much for listening. I hope a lot of what we shared and the guests we brought on have really helped you or family members or anybody that you know. But today, we have a really good friend of mine. We have Elizabeth Atkins, an amazing real estate agent at Remax Alliance here in Northern Colorado. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thanks for being here with us today.
Absolutely.
So you have an amazing story. I think I related with you right away when we met. Anytime we meet folks that have overcome this, it's a really good connection. So, start your story wherever you feel fit and let us know a little bit about you.
All right. Sounds good. Well, I will say I have been sober almost 6 years. May 19th, 2019 is my sobriety date.
Congrats.
Coming up on 7?
Is it coming up 7 or 6? 6. Coming up
on 6? Okay,
yeah,
cool.
Coming up on 6. I'd say my story starts, kind of like yours, Mitch's.
God damn it. It's the one thing I forgot to do.
You're fine.
Airplane mode, no internet. Okay. I'm sorry about that.
You're fine. So my story kind of starts like yours does a little bit. I kind of grew up, great family. I grew up in Kingwood, which is north of Houston. So
Okay.
We called it the Kingwood bubble. Like it was just a suburb of Houston, and, nothing really bad happened, in Kingwood. So I grew up there, and I grew up in the Episcopal Church. I loved my church. My family loved the church. We had a, great youth group that I got real into. A friend Gary and I were kind of the lead of it. I would sing, he would play his guitar, and, we did everything. We went to happenings, which was like youth group, things out, in the country or whatnot, and for weekends. And I got real into those every single summer. And I had 2 best friends, Clay and Michael, and we did everything together for a long, long time. Walked to school together, went to their houses, whatever, just great friends. And then I started dating Clay, and we didn't date very long, probably about 6 months. But he went off to a youth group gathering that he was doing a lead at. And Michael and I surprised him to visit him. And he had given my bracelet I had given him to another girl, and she was wearing it, and I saw it. And I mean, my heart shattered in a million pieces. And
how old were you?
This was my sophomore year in high school. So a little younger, but sophomore year in high school. And I, we didn't have cell phones and stuff
Right.
back there. I didn't have, way to contact him and let's discuss this or anything like that. So, he got home, and the night he was coming home, I spent the night with his sister. And he came home, and he went into his room, and he just shut the door and locked it. And so I just didn't know what to do. I was just like, I have no idea what's happening here. And so I just kind of slid a note under his door and just said, good luck to you. And I guess this is the end, whatever. And I remember walking into the room, and the radio was playing, and it had that song, It Must Have Been Love, But It's Over Now. And I don't think I've ever cried so hard in my entire life.
Yeah, you're like, the universe is kicking me in the face.
Awful.
Come on, Clay, be better, brother.
Right? But I think, it wasn't just the breakup that hurt so much. It was just kind of, I lost my best friend, one of my best friends. And obviously that, the 3 of us, we just kind of drifted apart from there.
Yeah.
So, but I was heartbroken. And my mom always says, man, I should have gotten you therapy back then. I just didn't realize how much that, really affected you. And it was years, and 5-8 years before I felt like I was actually over that. And I think going back and stuff through some therapies and stuff like that, I really realized that it was just like my innocence was gone. That's when my innocence ended. and then I went off the rails, because I didn't.
Up until that point, had anything like that really happened to you in your life? Like something, and it didn't have to be that exact situation, but something that had such an internal impact on your life?
No, that was probably one of the biggest, that was the first hurt that I had
like
ever
real
felt.
pain.
Yeah. And so, I didn't go off the rails, right away when it comes to alcohol or drugs or anything. I just, I started drinking a little. I did FFA and I raised a lamb.
Nice.
And so, I kind of got into that, but we'd go out and drink or whatever, but never a lot and, stuff like that. But it was my senior year in high school where I met a guy named Mike.
Can I ask you a question real quick before we get too far? How did that impact your spiritual journey?
It didn't impact it until I met Mike. Okay. And so when I met Mike, he was an atheist and he did not, and I guess I didn't do a lot of youth group stuff anymore.
After that?
No.
Yeah.
But Mike was an atheist. And so my mom hated that boy for good reason. But I remember my brother actually chased him down the street with a baseball bat once. He was 4 years younger than me. I know. I was like, oh, Christopher.
Sorry, so, I've got in fights with multiple of my sister's boyfriends.
Oh yeah, he was something else. So anyway, I kind of fell into his trap. But he smoked a lot of weed. So I smoked weed every once in a while and stuff like that. But really, I just kind of started I wrote poetry to like the devil or just real dark stuff. I got into darkness at that point, and
that's why I call it the devil's lettuce.
Yeah,
just saying.
Yeah, for sure.
That's really good. That's good.
For sure.
I'll give you that one. So much better than Jinkos.
Oh man, well you're on the devil's lettuce when you wear Jinkos. Dude.
If I had known your size, I would have totally gotten you guys Jinkos.
God. I don't even think they make
with
them.
Lunchables.
I'm never telling you.
I've looked them up, man. They're around. If you want to get them, you can.
They've got to be there.
Sorry. That's derailment number one.
Right. So anyway, I just, I never really left God. Like God was still there to me, but I was angry, at God, I think at that point. And so anyway, I pushed him in the pool, on my prom night because I took him to prom and he was a year older than me and he was doing cocaine and I had no idea. Oh. And so he was doing it all night long in the bathroom. And so I never was dancing. I was not having a good time. And when I figured out what he was doing, I just pushed him in the pool and I left. So
that's awesome. Nice.
Yeah. So that was the end of that relationship. And then I guess I went off to college right after that on probation. So I didn't have great grades in high school just because I didn't care. Yeah. And so I went off to SFA and I went to
what's that?
Stephen F. Austin.
Okay.
In Texas. So I went there and it was like a co-ed dorm and it was just the summer. I don't even know if I went to class ever, maybe 3 times, because I just drank a lot and had a really good time, played mud football, did everything I could possibly do before I got kicked out because obviously I didn't get good grades. So after that, I moved back to the Houston area. So I actually moved to Houston. I have always been in property management since high school. And so I was running a senior living place. And so I had met some friends, a waiter at Chili's, and we started dating. I had met friends from him and, stuff like that. So we all kind of ended up moving in together and just having a real good time. They always smoked weed. Weed was never something I enjoyed because it just made me tired and I just go to sleep.
Yeah.
But then we dabbled in, other stuff and, we dabbled in some acid, which wasn't my favorite either. I never had like a great time with it. And then I did ecstasy, and that I loved. So I had,
we are the same.
We are. Yeah. That was my drug of choice for sure for a while. So I guess maybe a good year and a half. We kind of all just had some fun, went to raves, did the thing, and I did my job. And the ecstasy, I think, really started making me more and more emotional as I did it more and more. And so Rick, sat down and had a conversation with me and said, this just isn't going to work out. You're not the same person I met. Well, I didn't know what to do. That broke my heart. And so, my friend that was living with me, it was me and her. She gave me Coke one night, and I took it, and I was like, "Oh, I'm invincible! Like nothing hurts anymore. Like this is awesome." And so I kind of got into that, and then I started adding crystal meth into it. So I kind of dabbled both.
Yeah.
Wow.
And so I did that for a while. I mean, the first time I took it, I was addicted. First time.
Meth,
Cocaine.
cocaine. Yeah.
Yeah.
Addicted immediately. And so that invincibility, that not feeling the pain,
Totally.
of everything, from Clay all the way up, from high school and the whole deal. And at this point, I wasn't really talking with my parents very often because I knew I was doing something wrong.
How old were you at this time?
19, I believe.
Okay.
19 to 20. I think it was kind of right in that age era. I have a hard time remembering some of that age stuff, but but I do know it was like 19 to 20. And so then she had a boyfriend that moved in. Well, he was one of the biggest drug dealers in Houston. Name was Nate. And so I was like you, I never got in trouble. So I was, I was at some club of whatnot. I'm snorting cocaine off the back of the, toilet. Cops walk in, they're got me on my arms behind me. And he just walked up and was like, "Oh, no, she's with me." And I'm like,
whoa,
okay,
that's crazy.
All right. I'm good. All right, cool. I'm going home tonight. So that that kind of started making me go, and then I'd roll over and I'd come out. They were sleeping. It was 1 bedroom. So they slept in my, dining room, and there was a gun on the table next to him all the time. And I remember looking at that going, what the hell am I doing? And I'm like, this is kind of not me.
Yeah.
And so, but I was doing it so much, days. I was up for days and then sleep. That I had lost a lot of weight, and I was 83 pounds. I mean, I looked like death.
Was that from the coke and meth?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that's all I did. I didn't eat. I just did that and for days and slept and then woke up and did it again.
Wow.
And so, I mean, I can see how quickly, I mean, this whole time frame from the crystal meth and the coke that I was doing was only 6 months.
It's crazy.
And I lost so much weight in that much time. And I remember one day looking in the mirror and just a voice came to me that said, "Remember who you are." Well, my mother used to say that to me every time I walked out the door. "Remember who you are." And
That's awesome.
And I just was like, okay, that was God. And he just told me to remember who I am and who the hell am I? Because this is not who I am. And so I picked up the phone and I called my dad. And I remember it was his birthday too. I don't remember which birthday it was, but I called my dad and I was like, "Daddy, can you please come get me? Like, I'm addicted to cocaine and crystal meth. I need to go to rehab." And so he did, and that was probably one of the saddest and happiest days of my parents' lives because I called him again, and my parents and I were always close. They were great people. I had a great upbringing. We had family trips, fun, they didn't do anything wrong.
Yeah.
And so I remember my dad, I went home and I was in his office and he had a little couch in his office and he was sitting down and I was literally curled up in fetal position in his lap, bawling, And so we went to a rehab place and they wanted me to be in-house. They wanted me to take something also so that I would, because I was doing so much.
Methadone?
I don't know, but I didn't take it. I refused. So I was like, look, I'm refusing to take anything and I will be outpatient or I'm not doing this. And so obviously they said, okay. I mean, I was 18. I was an adult.
They can't tell you.
They can't really tell me.
And it's not court ordered.
Right. So, so I did. I went through NA and I mean, the stories I heard in there were just, I remember listening to, some of these adults that had kids that were, doing all this stuff. And I'm like, God, it breaks my heart. Like, thank God I went through this now than later, know? And so, so I never touched anything ever again. It's been, I don't know, 26, 27 years.
What about that whole process? And we can get way farther into this, but what do you think that made you successful?
Successful today or
No, not no
successful in that?
successful in your recovery.
Um, I would say when I put my mind to something, I put my mind to it. But I think what made me successful was I knew that wasn't me.
Yeah.
That's not who I wanted to be.
This is a choice that you had made.
It was a choice.
Yeah.
It was just a plain and simple, what are you doing?
Yeah.
Like, this is hurting people,
Yeah.
and it's hurting you more than anything. And, I was young and, I didn't give a shit about anything. But,
Right.
at that point, I knew that this is not who I wanted to be. And as I listened to these people in NA talk, I was like, I don't ever want to do that to my family if, when I have a family and, that kind of stuff. And so, I don't know. It wasn't, they always say Coke is one of the hardest things to get over, but it really, I just was done.
Yeah.
It wasn't something I wanted to start, and it wasn't something I wanted to continue.
Yeah.
So
it's just something that I'm trying to highlight too is a common theme in our podcast is like, what about the process, whatever process it was, and what I'm coming to realize is that it's simply just a personal choice,
it is.
And it's like, honestly, as dumb as it sounds, like sick and tired of being sick and tired,
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
So I just was curious if maybe there was something else there that, maybe led you into that, or.
I think just really, watching those other people, I did not want to.
What level
that.
what level of faith did you guys have growing up, and like spirituality? Because it seems to me like in that story, in that moment, like you were able to look at where you were at that point in time, plus, who God had intended you to be, which I feel like in active addiction can be a really, really hard thing to do.
And it can be. And we had a really good faith. I mean, church every Sunday. Yeah. We did all the church things. We didn't sit at home reading the Bible though. I've never actually read the Bible, but God was, we were good people. We were good Christians. We did our thing, and
right.
Not every Christian's great, but we did the right things.
Yeah. I think a lot of times too, like in our early years, like it was weaponized, against us as kids to, fall in line or respect your parents or don't do this or don't do that, so it's a lot of times we experienced religion and spirituality as a weapon, and I was just curious if you ever felt that way.
I do have so that we could go for hours into that conversation, but I do have a very big connection with my sister. So my sister, she died when she was 18 days old. So I was 3 when she was born. And she came at 24 weeks. So her name was Sarah. And one day I found her funeral book when I was in high school. And I'll just tell one story and try and make it as quick as I can. But I found her funeral book. So my mom and I talked about it. And somebody had told me at the Catholic Church, because I was like, she's my guardian angel. Like I just always, kind of thought that. And somebody had told me that was at the Catholic Church that she couldn't be my guardian angel because she wasn't baptized. And so I was devastated, yeah. Right? And so I had this big lion stuffed animal. I mean, he was huge, right? And I just looked at it crying and I was like, well, you can be my guardian angel then, whatever. Well, I went on Christmas Eve to a friend's house and we were over there and we went over just literally around the corner to my boyfriend's house. And for some reason, I brought this stuffed animal with me. I mean, I was a junior in high school. And so I brought this stuffed animal with me and we went over there. And on the way home, I mean, it was literally around a corner. So on the way home, I had this thing in my lap and we were going back. Well, she took the curve too fast. And I literally saw like my sister, like a little miniature Sarah in the thing. She was wearing a white dress, blonde hair, looked like me. And she said, spit out your Jolly Rancher. And I immediately did. And we got in a head-on collision. Well, I wasn't wearing my seatbelt. The guy in the other car went through the windshield. I did crack the windshield with my jaw and I dislocated my jaw. But because this lion was in my lap, I couldn't evacuate because I was,
kind of pinned you in there.
It pinned me in. And to top all it off, Angels Among Us was playing on the radio. And so right then and there, I was like, oh, she's my guardian angel. Yeah. And there has been quite a few stories since then. with her. And, like I said, we could go on for hours on
Yeah.
that with my stories,
That's
but
amazing.
it's a beautiful thing. So my spirituality has always been strong.
Yeah.
Because I know that Sarah's there.
Yeah.
I know
Yeah.
she's there.
That's cool.
And so anyway, I think coming back, that spirituality always had a piece of me.
Yeah.
So, God talking to me and telling me, remember who you are, was just a slap in the face of, you've got the devil wrapped around you right now.
Yeah.
Let go, and that's all I had to do was just let go.
Yeah.
God handled it from there. So, so I don't know if that hopefully that
Definitely
answered
absolutely.
your question in a really long way.
Yeah, and I feel like I have similar experiences in my life, where God just, there's multiple things that have happened to me that, I shouldn't be here, so I've always just felt like there was kind of a calling over my life, and it's weird to describe it, because it's just a feeling, like it's just like kind of this intuition, that you get. And I think even all through all of my life, all of my addiction, all of the issues that I had, like that was the one thing in my heart that I never really abandoned. Now my life and all of the choices that I was making didn't reflect that. But in my heart, like if somebody were to ask me at any point in time, like, what is going to happen to you when you die? I'd be like, oh, I go to heaven.
Right.
Like that was just, it's super ingrained in me.
Yeah. No, I 100% agree with that.
So I was just curious.
So after that, I moved into a house for a little while, with, a couple of guys. There's 3 guys, and I didn't live there very long, but I know I remember turning 21 there, because that was one of the first times I blacked out with alcohol. And so alcohol to me was a big blackout thing. Now, my grandmother was an alcoholic. And so my mom was always ingrained in me. They never, drank too much. And she always ingrained in me that, you got to be really careful with alcohol. You got to be really careful with alcohol, And so I thought of alcohol, not drugs. So, that's kind of, not that she didn't mean both. Maybe she didn't think I would ever do that. But, So that was one of the first nights I blacked out. Was my 21st birthday. I remember.
So this is post you kicking meth and cocaine.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay.
So then I just kind of, I've always drank, but not a lot,
Right.
And so 21st birthday, I blacked out. I remember waking up and I had a whole bunch of clothes in bags, because I had just moved in, and I remember just waking up and puking in a bag, and I was like, oh, okay, this is going to be a fun day, So, but remembered nothing from the night before. And so, I never really, I just kind of did my life. I moved to Austin. I drank some. I don't think it was just ever really like a huge problem or anything like that. Met my first husband there. We ended up moving here. I came to visit his family and fell in love with the mountains. And I'm like, let's go.
Yeah.
So, we moved here. I was still in property management. And so I opened up, I worked hard, and I opened up a property and, did a lot of lease ups actually here in Fort Collins area. But they drank a lot. His family, it was, his parents would be at our house, 4 or 5 nights a week. And so it was, drinking till 2-3 o'clock in the morning. They would just be up all night long drinking. And so, I drank, with them. We smoked cigarettes in the garage, drank, came in, played cards. But then I had my daughter, Jordan. So Jordan was 2 months early. And so I had lost all my fluid with her, and Sarah was there. That was another time Sarah was there. But I had lost all my fluid with her, and my mom just happened to be down with me. And I asked the doctor, hey, can we get an ultrasound so she could see it? And I had no fluid. Wow. And so thank God, I would have lost her. And so she came 2 months early, but she was in the hospital for 5.5 weeks. So it was, I didn't do a lot of drinking then. It was going to visit her in the hospital and, that kind of stuff. And then she came home, and then I was scared all the time because I didn't have the monitors telling me that her oxygen was good or, any of that kind of stuff. So I think that's where my anxiety really got bad. But they continued to drink, and it was like, I was the one that had to go upstairs when she woke up in the middle of the night.
Right.
And, so it was just, I was playing mom at that point,
right.
and she started having night terrors. So it was, I was downstairs with her while she's screaming and trying to bite and, all kinds of stuff when she was 1. And but I got real sick of not being able to have any friends, like his parents were always over. And so I just, he was a good guy. He still is a good guy.
Yeah.
But it wasn't me. Like I never really, I don't think I was ever really myself in any relationship I had since Clay. Like I always changed for that person. Until I met my current husband, and he'd probably like me to be a little bit more not myself sometimes.
Don't do it.
Yeah.
He's a good man. He has put up with quite a bit.
Yeah, I could say the same thing about my wife too, but she's been a godsend for me.
Yeah. So we had Jordan. So I got divorced with her dad in 2006, and so when that happened, I started drinking a lot when I didn't have her. And it wasn't beer, it was hard alcohol. Like when she wasn't there, it broke my heart when he had her, because we did like 1 week off, 1 week on. And I met Jason during that time, my current husband. And man, I remember him picking me up off the floor once by my laundry room. And he was like, you gotta get it together, and he was a friend at that point. We were just kind of, in fact, he was dating one of my friends. And so, fast forward a little bit more, we lost our house. My ex-husband refused to sign modification papers and stay in it in any type of financial thing with me. And so, he just let the house foreclose. And so, that was irritating and hard, and so I didn't have a place to go. So I ended up moving in with Jason, who was at that point my boyfriend. And so I moved in with him. He lived in like the trailer park right behind, like Snow Mesa area right there. The Harmony one. So,
yeah.
So
I know what you're talking about.
Yeah. So we lived there for a couple of years, but, I started working at Zaquila, when they opened. And so I started as just a waitress, and then I ended up the bartender and a manager. And so when I got off, I had found a drink. It was, wasn't a margarita, but it was like a sweet margarita. It was something like sweet like that. I can't remember what it's called. And so I would just start downing these things, as soon as I got off work. And I drank a little bit during work, but not a lot, so I would down these things during work. I was taking property management break. I did that a lot. Throughout things. So I would go home drunk quite a bit, and Jason drank quite a bit. So, we had a great relationship. It was fun. We had a good time. We were drunk a lot, but having a great time. We did a lot of awesome other things too, hiking, that kind of stuff. I remember one night that I was driving home, and it was icy, and I slid. And I've told him this story, but I slid. And I literally ran over, and we always used to laugh. There's a sign that says "Happy Kids at Play," and we were always like, "In a trailer park? No, there's not. Like nobody's happy in a trailer park right now." So we were laughing at it. But so I literally hit the sign, and then I hit the car, and I like tapped the house.
Oh no!
I mean, like, phew, all the way in, and I'm like, I'm wasted. Like, I gotta leave a note. Like, I can't just
stay here.
I can't stay here. So I didn't even leave a note at that point. I just went home, and I was like, okay, we got to go back and put a note on this door. So we did, we would put a note on this door, and I never heard from the people, but I did call the trailer park, and I'm like, I ran over your sign. Like, I want to pay for it. And they were like, oh, that it's fine. We have plenty of those things. Those people run into this all the time. Not the
first time that's happened. Yeah.
And I'm like, oh my gosh. Okay. So anyway, we just kind of, I remember we fought a lot because if we were drunk, we would just get at each other.
That's what I was going to ask you guys. If you were like, what kind of drunk were you? Were you happy? Were you emotional?
I was usually always really happy, except for some reason with Jason, I would get angry because, he would like push my buttons or, whatnot, or, try and have a serious conversation. I didn't want to have a serious conversation. And, so we did, we definitely fought a lot. And I remember one time trying to leave his house. He took my keys and I was so mad at him, but I had my suitcase, and I don't think I was wearing anything on my up top. So I'm running down the thing, half naked with my suitcase, and I like fell into his wall and like literally like broke the whole. There's like
no.
a
Like a body
like
print?
Elizabeth body print in his wall, and I'm like, oops, maybe I shouldn't go anywhere. So we fought a lot. He
Yeah.
tried to break up with me, I don't know how many times, but I would leave beer on his front porch with a little note, and he'd always call me back. But he didn't think he was ever going to get married. And here he is, he's got a, pretty serious girlfriend who's got a kid,
Yeah.
and that was big for him. He didn't quite know what to do with that.
Yeah.
So we did end up getting married. And so, then we moved in, to a house and all that stuff. We kind of rented for a long, long time. We went from different city to different city, but we struggled a lot with jobs. And like, I remember he was like literally working at a phone book place when Hunter was born. And so he was working nights, and I mean, we had a lot of stress,
Yeah.
And so, we drank a lot.
Yeah.
We had fun though. We had a great time, and we were still good parents, and just
Yeah.
had a great time. But fast forward a little bit longer, it started getting, to where he was so stressed that he was kind of angry, and so when he drank, never physical, just angry, just yelling. So there was always a lot of yelling at the house that, Jordan dealt with. I don't think my son remembers much. But Jordan does. And, there's a lot of trauma for her with that. And so, he ended up quitting drinking a little over a year before I did.
Okay.
Maybe a year. So he stopped drinking, just cold turkey, just done. He's always been able to do that. I wish I had that self-control.
Just willpower.
Yeah. I mean,
I don't have it either.
Oh, it's just not there,
Yeah.
But just cold turkey, done. Never picked up another drink. And
still to this day.
Good
for you.
That's
awesome.
Still
That is awesome.
Day. Yeah. And so, then I was like, yeah, well, I won't drink, that's fine. You quit, I'll quit too, and I didn't really think I had a problem. I don't know how, but I didn't think I had a problem. And so, he stopped drinking. So I worked at, an apartment complex in town, Terra Vita, and I was the manager. And so they actually had a keg like in the kitchen for the residents to come in and have drinks and stuff. So I never really bothered with that before, I always came home to drink, but then when I couldn't come home to drink, I would start drinking, after work. Well, I'm not going to be late, honey, and I'd have some beers, and then I'd be out with the residents out by the fire pit having beers, and then it would just get later and later. And then he'd start getting upset because I wasn't coming home until late. And, I wasn't being a good mom, or a good wife. And, and I wasn't doing anything bad. I just was drinking,
Right.
And so, then it started getting to the point where I was like, okay, well, I got to get home at night. So, I pick my kid up at like 2, and then I come back to work or whatever. So I started like, okay, well, I can just go over to Austin's for lunch, and, I'll have lunch there. And I just started having beers there when I had lunch there. And then I was taking meetings there with like, the owner and, everybody at our weekly meetings, and I'm drinking, and then I'd go pick my kid up, and drive him home. And then it was like, okay, I'm going to go market, hey guys, I'm going to market. So I became like the worst boss in the entire wide world because I wasn't even there, and I'd like make all these brochures up to market and then just throw them away because I went to the bar and drank instead. So
it's crazy how you can justify doing that. Like the lengths that we go.
Right.
When I was working in a restaurant, I would like intentionally not order something small like cilantro or onions. Order came in, oh, they didn't deliver our onions. And so I'd go buy some and stop at the liquor store.
Right.
It's just dumb.
So I guess it started getting pretty bad, I would say, at DC Oaks because I really loved their beer.
Yeah.
And so I was a beer drinker. I mean, I just drank and drank and drank their beer. And I mean, when Jordan, she did golf. I mean, there's so many incidents where I drank and drank, and different things, but I was a blackout drinker, but I was also very functional.
Yeah.
I was a very functional drinker. So there was times I'd come home and Jason was like, have you been drinking? And I'm like, know.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know how he didn't know. Like, he had to have
He
known.
probably did,
He
yeah.
knew deep
They
down
know.
that I was. And, I finally was just like, what, this is getting really bad, and I do parties at the, for the residents, and I'd be drinking out of like a Dixie cup and, drinking the wine like nobody knows I'm drinking.
Yeah.
And, it was just whatever chance I could get. It was, I was drinking. I never really drank in the morning. It was, just an afternoon beers or, then it was after work beers.
Did you ever try to go, like during this whole time, did you realize that you had a problem?
No,
So you never really tried to not drink?
no,
Okay.
no. Mm-mm. I think trying to hide it during that year really made me drink more.
Yeah.
Because
for sure.
it was like, well, I can't do it when I get home, so I
Yeah.
have to go do it now. So it
Yeah.
was like in my brain.
And
that,
you never
like,
really slowed down though to think like, oh my gosh, if I'm not, like it just never clicked that it was an issue.
No, it never did. It just never
That's
did.
wild.
And yeah, I mean, I had some, blackout nights or, whatever, but I never during that. I never drank enough during that year to have those blackouts. I had the blackouts before, but I was always with my husband or whatever. And
Right.
I'm like, what did I say last night? He was pissed off this morning,
Yeah.
or whatever. So, so then I got let go. I've never been, that was like, what? What do you mean you're letting me go? And they're like, well, your performance is, not as strong as it used to be. That was why they let me go. Well, duh, I was a complete alcoholic. So, I sat there, I cried for a while. I came home and I'm like, maybe you need to stop drinking. Like, this is actually affecting your life, and you're driving your kid around in the car, and maybe this is something you need to stop doing. So, on my birthday on April 6th of 2019, I went into the AA rooms. And I come clean with my husband. I had been drinking for an entire year. He's angry. He's mad. Like, I don't know how he didn't leave. During that time frame. But I came clean. I'm like, I never did anything wrong. There was.
Yeah, it was never any infidelity
Right.
or
It was
anything
always
like that.
good.
Yeah.
I just like drinking.
Yeah.
And so it was stressful. I mean, my job was hard because I had an owner, I had a management company, so I had two bosses. They didn't get along, so it was like, my boss would be like, "You can't, when the owner comes in, don't answer this question or whatever," back and forth, and I'm like, "Oh my god!" Like, it was weird. Just so stressful, and I could get fired by either of them at any time, and so we just didn't really know what I was going to do at that point, and so. That's when I decided I was going to do real estate. So I started taking real estate classes because I was getting unemployment. So I could actually afford to take these classes and I had time, and I never had before. And so I started doing that. But anyway, I went back to the rooms. I went back into the rooms on my birthday, which was April 6th. And I just stood up and I was like, let's do this. And, I was ready to do the same thing I did with drugs back in the past. And, I listened to everybody's story and I talked. And then I decided, a lot of people in the rooms, they're divorced or, they're single or whatnot, all this stuff kind of went through. And, sometimes I don't have the greatest things to say about like that, whoever they divorced or whatnot. And so I just started thinking and I'm like, I don't think I'm an alcoholic. I think this is my husband's fault. Like, I think that the anger that he had, or whatnot, or the stress, that he's under, I think that's causing me to drink, And so I actually told him to go live with his parents for a while. And I just wanted to separate. And so he did. And it was a month. I mean, I was drinking too much still. I blacked out one night. I had a whole bunch of girlfriends over. I blacked out again. And I was like, oh, this isn't his fault. This is your fault. It's totally your fault. Not his fault at all. He didn't do this. You did this. And so I called him and I was like, can you come home? I'm really sorry, and this was not your fault. This was my fault. And, I'm, as much as that was a really awful time and, it actually, hurt him a lot and, gave him some PTSD for a while. Like, are you going to kick me out again? And stuff like that. And, I think I needed it to really realize you are an alcoholic,
Yeah.
you know, like you can't continue to drink. And so I went back into the rooms and the AA rooms, and um, I was done. You know, I was ready. I realized
Nice.
it took me that to realize, girl, you are an alcoholic. You know,
Yeah.
you can't pretend you're not.
Was that hard for you to admit that?
Yeah, I was really disappointed in myself because
Yeah.
I had already gone through NA. I had already been there. Like I knew better.
This brings up something for me that I actually want to highlight, because one thing I've been thinking a lot about lately around this podcast is like, stories are great because they bring other people in, right? Like they make you feel safe. Like one of the first things you told me, I've never met you face to face until this morning, but one of the things that you told me was that you feel comfortable around me, you know, and that's the point of vulnerability, right?
Right.
That's the point of us going first and telling our stories first. Like that's what we want to create. But we have to learn how to live our lives sober.
Right.
You know what I mean? And I think that's where I'm starting to realize, like, that's probably where our mission will end up being developed, you know, for this podcast, is like, how do we help people get sober and then stay sober, right? Like that's the important part of all of this. And you said you were super disappointed in yourself because you'd already gone through the same process with drugs, right? So what somebody brought to my attention this morning was that even though you get sober, you're still an addict, right? And so you still have that mentality, you still have those things. And there are most people, and I don't know, I haven't looked up statistics or anything on this, but, you know, fact check me if you want, but I would tend to guess that we're always going to be addictive people, right?
Absolutely.
So, and alcohol is not the only addictive substance on planet Earth. And, you know, so it's like, how do we put those checks and balances in place? Like, what do we do for ourselves post sobriety to keep ourselves sober? You know, I know for me personally, like I realized that an idle mind for me is a very dangerous place. I think a lot of, I love to have a good time, love it, you know, and even to this day, like I look forward to my time at night, right? I get to do what I want. Like those are the things that, like I put them way up here on a pedestal, right?
Right.
So I have to know that stuff, you know, and my relapse came out of boredom. You know, I had broken my foot. I was sitting in Kansas with not a lot to do at my in-laws' place, and I knew that there was alcohol there. I just had to find it, you know, and so I relapsed, of course, you know, and I realized, and I'm grateful for that, because I realized in that, like, if I want to stay sober, it's not just making the decision to not drink, right? It's putting so many other things into place, and honestly working on yourself mentally to understand why you were even in that place in the first point, right? Like, why was it alcohol? What about me, or what about my life or my experiences caused me to do that, right?
Right.
And whatever that thing is, you know, I think that that's the thing that we need to address, right? Like I think alcohol is a symptom of all of this other stuff that's going on in our hearts and our lives and our minds, you know.
And I can see that, but I can also see that there's so many different factors too. Like, you know, when I was younger,
Absolutely.
it was just fun. You know, I was doing what was fun, and this was a good thing. And then as I got older, it was stress.
See, and that's where I love your mom's perspective or your mom in the story, because she saw that, right? And she saw maybe you personally, like, hey, be careful. I see you. I know who you are. And why do you think she told you, don't forget who you are?
Yeah, because she's a mom. She's not dumb. She knew what I was going to go out and do stupid stuff. And, you know, that's
really cool.
And that's all she could really do, you know, is, hey, let me just remind you of who you are. You know, you're a child of God, you know, remember who you are. And I say that to my son, you know, all the time now too. And you know, I've said it to my daughter, but it's, you know, it's hard, but you're right. Addiction. I mean, now I'm addicted to sugar, you know, now I've, you know, there's just, you know, I love candy. I'm constantly eating candy, you know, and it's there's always that addiction.
Feel bad. I am too.
Love my candy.
You know why though?
I'm so pissed. I can't find gobstoppers anywhere. They're gone. Like the hard sprees and gobstoppers. Those were my two favorite. Can't find them anywhere.
Huh.
Well,
Yeah.
Wonka monopolized the everlasting gobstoppers, so people got those. They don't need the.
They don't actually have to make them anymore
mean,
because they're everlasting.
Yeah.
There's like one gas station I found that has like the hard sprees. I don't want the chewy ones. I want the hard ones. And I mean, I will buy them out, So now I'm at now and laters because that's the only thing I can, buy.
Those are
Well,
so good.
I just feel like there's so much sugar in booze, and it's like our bodies like kind of crave that because, dude, I think I powered through my kid's entire bag of Halloween candy. I had to like go out and buy them more candy because I ate it all.
Yeah, and I'm not really like a
though.
chocolate person. Like I want the the candy.
Are you serious? It was like $40 for a half-pound bag.
Cheap after Halloween.
Yeah, after you get half off.
Dude, did you guys? Oh man, I was so pissed at Costco. It was $40 for a fucking 1 pound bag.
Ridiculous.
I was like, you got to be kidding me.
I know.
Pretty wild.
It is,
but
inflation.
that's $40 every ate.
So anyway, so I after I guess I went to the rooms, I was done, and it took me a little bit. I think that I have 3 coffee stickers on my AA book, like the little things that you stick on top of the coffee so that it stays hot or whatever. The little stopper things. Because that was 3 times I almost drank. Like I drove myself into Collindale Golf Course. I just was in their parking lot and I'm like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
And so like I drove away and I went to a coffee shop and I called my husband. I didn't call my sponsor. I called my husband for some reason. I was like, I'm almost drank. Like talk to me out of this. Like I'm having an anxiety attack here. And so that was it. There was 3 times that I almost drank, but I never really, I mean, do I see alcohol? I mean, I'm a realtor. So of course I'm going to.
What year was your date? It's May 19th, but what year?
May 17th.
May 17th, sorry.
May 17th of 2019.
2019, okay.
And so I just, people are always like, I have my own networking event called Cheers NoCo Networking. And I've done it for about 4.5 years, a little over that. And so, people are like, you can just be around that. And I'm like, yeah, because I have never had an issue with.
Is that like a real estate thing?
It's just for everybody. It's not just reals. In fact, I think I'm the only realtor there. Sometimes another one will come. Yeah,
that's cool.
You're welcome to come. So anyway,
is that so at Condale?
No, I had that at CB and Potts, and then it was at Mash Labs, and we're doing it at Ted's Sweetwater Grill right now.
Nice.
But I'm not sure where the next one's going to be. We are working on that right now.
Yeah, let us know. I mean, I'd love to.
So it's the first Thursday of every month, 5 to 7. So good times.
Real quick.
Yeah.
I love that part of your story, though, that you had opportunities where you almost drank. Mm-hmm. My sister turned me on to this thing where, she's like, do you have any idea how many decisions you make before you drink? Like when you have the urge.
I know you make 35,000 decisions a day.
Really?
That's an average.
Holy crap.
Yeah.
Wow.
And I thought I was indecisive.
Okay. Take that with a grain of salt because I heard it on like a radio ad.
Sure.
But I'm sure it's probably pretty close.
Yeah. Well, you make a choice to speak up. You make a choice of what you're going to say.
What you're going to wear.
Right. Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah.
But the point was you have the urge. I want to drink. Do I drink or no? Yeah, I could drink. Well, shit, I got to get my car. Okay. So every choice you make, you got to get up, you got to get the car, you got to drive to the liquor store. You actually have to purchase it. You have to get in your car. Do you drink in the parking lot or do you wait until you get home to drink? Do you open it? All that's what I'm saying and all those, but you had the strength and the knowledge to stop yourself and then reach out for help. That's amazing. I mean,
and I'm not one to reach out for help. I'm not one to sit down and talk about my emotions, and I'm not one to sit down.
Can I ask you why?
I don't know. I've always been that way. I don't, I think kind of growing up, our family was, we didn't talk about things, we're just going to pretend that didn't happen, or whatever.
That's
and
my wife's family.
And so,
I love you guys.
a fight or, happens and we're like, whatever, I'm over it. So that's really hard for my husband because he is a communicator. He wants to sit down and talk and talk and talk. And like we get in a fight and I'm like, I'm done. I'm over it. Like I forgot about it already. And he's like, do you want to sit down and have a conversation
Is your husband a very principled person?
He is. Yeah. In fact, both of you guys probably get along with him. He's a skateboarder. He
we all did.
Yeah,
well, let's meet up and do some kickflips.
I know. He needs to.
We need to start a group called like the Kickflip Club or something like that.
You totally should. He would
skaters, dude.
He would love to come out and skate with you guys.
I used to be a part of a group called the Krusty Crew.
Oh my god.
Okay.
It was like a bunch of old dudes that would just meet up around here and skate. I'm sure they're still Actually, there's a real estate agent, another real estate agent gal that was in it that works here.
Oh,
Nice.
that's funny.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, you never met him. You might have met him somewhere.
What's his last name?
Atkins.
Oh, that makes sense.
Yeah.
I'm an
Yeah.
idiot.
He was married. So it's Atkins. I did take his last name.
Here's your son.
And it's like the diet, ATK, So anyway, but he's out there and doing all this stuff, and I don't remember where we were going.
Well,
that.
just why you
Oh,
are able, or you
that I
don't
was
ask for
able-
help, but you
yeah.
do at that time.
So I don't, so calling him was that was pretty huge for me to call. Maybe I don't like to admit defeat either.
Yeah.
Like, I'm
Yeah.
kind of a competitive person, and
Sure.
with myself, not really with other people, like out in the real estate world, I'm like, who can I help? What can I do? What can I train you with? Let me help you with this,
Outgoing in that sense.
And that kind of thing. And that was one big thing when I quit drinking was, I was a social butterfly.
Yeah.
I was bubbly. I was out doing things.
Do you feel like alcohol fed into that, like in a positive way?
I do think a little, but even when I wasn't drinking that much, that's just my personality.
Sure.
But, I was afraid I wasn't going to be fun anymore.
Yeah.
Like
or have fun or
right. And that wasn't the case at all. I mean, I still had a great time and, was funny and, had good times, but,
you can actually feel life and the things that are going around.
Right. Now I remember,
you.
and then I remember,
Exactly.
the fun I had. But,
for you, is that it? Sorry.
No,
this is important too, because that's the biggest fear why people might justify going back to drinking. I can't have fun. I can't be myself if I'm not drinking.
Right.
And I think you highlighted it right then and there. Just, it was fine.
It was absolutely fine. In fact, I probably wasn't myself while I was drinking.
Right.
And I used to even try to be like, oh, well, I said that when I was drinking, which means I really meant it, because it just came out. You know how you're
there's a phrase that's, what is it? Drunken thoughts are sober words.
Right.
Or no, sorry, other way around. Drunken words are sober thoughts.
Which isn't true. It's just so not true.
No, it's not.
It's not true at all. Like
I would say that you're more likely to be an asshole.
Yeah, and you're going to hurt somebody, with the words that you're saying. So, which I did. I hurt my husband quite a bit. Like I said,
there's just a thing called tact too in life.
Right.
Where it's like I don't have to like you, but I also don't need to ruin your life for you to know.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I have no filter, and I still have no filter. But I have two very, very good friends.
You're authentic,
Daisha and Jen. Yeah, and it's we have so much fun.
That's like my brother and I. Yeah.
They laugh at me all the time because they're like, "Did you really just say that?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I totally did just say that."
So, what do you say, really quick? I'm sorry, I don't keep going back to this,
good.
but what do you say to the person that's listening, that's struggling right now, that I can't have fun, I can't be myself if I'm not drinking, or coming out of my shell is hard?
I dare them to try.
It's funny.
Try, put it down, because you know what? You're going to realize real fast that you're not yourself, who that is. And those people are going to have to do some work, and I 12 step, of AA, of course, is to, continue to help others. And I did sponsor a couple of people, and I actually had I had a hard time sponsoring people, actually. The first person I sponsored was a friend of mine. I worked with her husband for, a very long time, 12 years, I think. And they had actually gotten divorced. She had a stroke when she had her son was 2, and she had a stroke, and she was addicted to pain pills. And I had lost touch with her, so I didn't know, but they had gotten divorced. And so I saw her at a gas station, and I had said something about, being sober or whatever. And she was like, she called me and she was like, I'm totally addicted to alcohol and I need help. And so I tried really hard, when she had her boys in her, a picture of her boys, and in her AA book. I took her to meetings. I went to coffee shops, sat and talked. But she couldn't stop. And I knew, I took her places and she was drunk. And I, finally I said, hey, Christy, I love you, honey, but I can't continue to sponsor you until you're ready. And you're not ready, like you're still drunk, and meeting with me drunk. And, I want to help, but I can't until you're ready. I can't continue to do this. And it's just enabling you. And she ended up dying. She drank herself to death. And so that was really rough. That was hard for me. And awful story. 2 months later, her ex-husband had a stroke and died, massive stroke and died.
Jesus Christ.
I know. It was awful.
Did they have kids?
They did. They had 2. So they live with his mom. And I mean, it was was just awful. You know, those kids went through a lot. But and then the second person I tried to, you know, she couldn't stop crying. I mean, we would just sit and talk and she would cry through the whole thing. And I'm like, I'm really sorry, but you need therapy. I'm not a therapist. Like I can help you, but
like
you're not at the, you know, you're not at the point where I can help you yet because you can't even listen to me read, you know, and stuff like that. So those were the two people I attempted to help in AA. But then at my church, I got a Emmanuel Lutheran in Loveland.
Yeah.
And so I started doing Celebrate Recovery there. So we had like a Celebrate Recovery room. I started leading it. But I was noticing people would come in, like when we were on chapter 17 or whatever, and they were lost, you know, because we weren't at the beginning. And so I changed it. And I also noticed that people weren't coming in because I think they thought it was just recovery of alcohol. And it wasn't.
Yeah,
it was depression. It was, you know, anything, income, you know, codependency, whatnot. So I changed it up and it's called Seeking Serenity, and it's you meet one-on-one. So, you know, there's Guy Rich that meets with the guys and I meet with the women and, you know, meet, you know, every week with whoever. I have actually taken a step back from that in the past 2 months just because I'm dealing with some pain stuff that I've been dealing with for about 2.5 years. So I just, you know, I think helping people getting through those steps is what is so important. Yeah. I mean, and everybody in this entire world, I swear to God, should go through those steps. You know, those steps are so good to figure out some of those, you know, anger issues or resentments or those things that you're carrying around that some people don't even know they're carrying.
Absolutely.
You know?
You're talking about AA steps?
Yeah. Yeah. But so Celebrate Recovery has the same steps.
Okay.
So it's the exact same steps, only there's a Bible verse that goes with them.
Nice.
So
it's all stuff through, it's like AA through church.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it's a national program. Like pretty much every church has some version of it.
Yeah, that's cool. So, we have some at our church too.
It is also like she said, it's a lot more than just alcohol. Like it could be, you know, whatever.
Yeah.
Like,
in fact, the people I worked with through those steps, none of them were alcohol, actually.
I was going to say, I went to one at Res, and there was mostly alcoholics, but there was a few people that were struggling with like pornography or something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So that's cool.
Yeah. So it's really good.
It's an amazing resource.
So we kind of took out, I still kind of, when I made it Seeking Serenity, I put them together. So I kind of put some of the literature from Celebrate Recovery and some of the literature from AA together. So I kind of made my own little program.
Nice.
And that's kind of how I did it. But again, I kind of took a step back for a little bit. I'll get back into it. But right now I just need to focus on me and my family. So, but I will say, you know, one of the things, and I talked about this to my daughter the other day, you know, one of the things that always scared me in AA is I would like watch people and they'd like lose a parent or, you know, something like that. And then they drink again. And then they would come back in and, you know, be like, I drank, you know, I lost my mom.
Like some traumatic thing happens in their life. Yeah.
And so I was always really scared of that, you know, right? Like, you know, even those people out there right now that are scared of that, you know, they're sober. And what happens if this happens? Or, you know, I was always afraid of my mom and I are very good friends to this day. I call her all the time and we talk. And I couldn't even imagine. And I was like, what will I drink? You know, if that happens. And my daughter's senior year in high school, she's 20 now. She attempted suicide. And I was sober at that time. And so thank God, you know, because I was able to help her through that. And no mom or parent knows how the hell to deal with that when they didn't know it was coming. You know, I had no clue it was coming and it was out of nowhere. And
this was your child?
Yeah, my daughter. Yeah. So, so she's 20 now. She's doing fine. She's back at home and just kind of healing. She's gone through a lot since then, but, you know, I made it through that. And when I made it through that, I was like, oh, you got this. Like you can make it through things like that. I didn't think of drinking during that time. I needed to be sober during that time. You know, I had things that I had to be a mom, you know, you know, even losing a parent, you know, you've got funerals to do, you know, you've got to be there. You've got to be on, you know? And so, and be not selfish, you know?
And I like to, that you brought that up because I think a lot of addicts do this, and we always call future tripping, you know, where it's just like you start to create these fears that are, I mean, in that scenario, they're an unknown amount of years down the road.
Right.
You know? And so it's like, gosh, but then when you start to do that, you start to play tricks on yourself, right? And you start to trip out. And then all of a sudden this anxiety comes from this reality that's like so far away from actual reality, you know? And I think that was what caused a lot of anxiety and probably depression and stuff inside me, which I feel like also caused me to drink a lot.
Well, and that, you know, that being said, like if you're continually thinking that's going to happen, you're going to drink.
It's going to happen.
Then as soon as that actually happens, you're going to drink because
Well,
you've put it in your brain.
Totally. You're manifesting,
you know, that
Yeah.
you're going to do this,
Yeah.
you know? And so it was, although that was a very hard time and you
Yeah,
know, still
I
is,
can't even imagine.
still is hard at times, you know, I'm constantly, I mean, I still have medicine locked up and the guns are locked up and, you know, she's 20 and home, but I'm like, what if my son, you know, I've got, you know, 12-year-old. So it's like, you know, that's a scary thing.
Yeah.
And so anyway, you know, I'm like, okay, you made it through that. Like, you're okay.
Yeah.
And, you know, there's times I used to love champagne. I just had I'm the president of the Severance Chamber and I just had like a business spotlight. We love our chamber members type thing. And there was champagne there. And we had, you know, non-alcoholic champagne as well. And, you know, so, but I look at it and I'm like, that looks really good because I loved champagne, you know, but I had no problem going to my non-alcoholic champagne.
Right.
And, you know, people I was with didn't drink either. So we all had our little toast with non-alcoholic.
And I was going to say, do you feel like obviously you've put people in your life, you know, that support your decisions and things like that. Do you find like yourself accountable to that? Do you know what I'm saying? Like, yeah, just like accountable to that, to those people, right? Like, does that help you not drink? Because I find myself like with this podcast with, you know, I'm like, dude, if I had one sip, it unwinds everything that we've done.
Absolutely. If I drank, and I've looked at beer and I'm like, damn, it's hot out and that looks really good. But if I know that if I took that sip,
see, and that's
I'd be
the
drunk in an hour.
But what you did in that scenario is you created something for yourself that gives you purpose.
Right. And, you know, and that's something I always thought, I'm like, why did I go through that drug stage? Why did I have to go through that and hurt so many people? Yeah. Like it was a 6-month thing, you know, like, why did I have to do that? But I realized later on, and why did I go through this alcoholism? And because God needed me, you know, he needed my help doing the 12-step and helping others. And I have helped others. And that's why I'm never that person that's like, oh yeah, no, I'm not going to say, you know, people are like, you want to drink? I'm like, no, I'm an alcoholic. You know, I have no problem saying that because you know what? They might need me and they'll come to me if they need me.
Well, and it's also a really noble thing, you know, I mean, and it requires an insane amount of grit, you know, and I mean, I found myself like, dude, my arrogance is on another level, you know, because one, I've always been very confident in myself for the most part. But dude, it's just like, I'm like, okay, now I've beat this. Like, I'm like kind of pat myself on the shoulder a little bit too much sometimes, you know?
Right.
Well, it's good to do that, man.
It is, you know, and that's right. There's room for all of those emotions, right? Negative, positive, all of it. Like God created us to be perfectly imperfect.
Right.
You know? And so it's like, there's gotta be room for those things, you know, but at the same time, like if it's too negative, we can't live there too long. You know what I mean? And I guess what I'm trying to highlight too in all of this is the biggest piece of sobriety for me today is the world that I've built around it, you know, and the purpose, right? Like it's actually in the 12-step program that it's a requirement that we go and we turn around and we help other people. Because once you put yourself in that service position, you remove yourself from your own skin, right? Life no longer is about you. It's about other people, right? And once you remove yourself from the equation and you stop thinking about yourself and focusing on everything that's going on inside of us, right? Because most alcoholics and addicts, I would tend to guess, are very deep thinkers. They probably know themselves inside and out because they've sat there for so long and the lens has been on them. Yeah. You know?
And you know, and that's totally true. And I want to say one thing to that because something I'm trying to teach my 12-year-old right now is his name's Hunter is, you know, he thinks a lot about other people. He always wants to help other people. Jordan was the same way. would get caught up in not being her or doing anything because she was trying to help these other people.
Right.
Always wanted to help. And I'm like, it is really good to help other people, but you have to have a balance.
Totally.
You know, you have to help you as much as you have to help other people. And, you know, just like right now, I know I needed to take a step back from doing, you know, the Seeking Serenity at my church because I deal with chronic pain. And so I'm trying to figure out that piece of that. And I can't do all of these other pieces and that at once. So I knew that, okay, it's time for you right now. And we'll get back to that, you know?
And that's actually a form of humility. It is to humble yourself enough to know like, hey, if I put myself in this position, I'm going to be helping nobody.
Right.
You know, like I'm actually probably going to be more of a detriment because of what's going on in my life.
Right.
You know, and so that's a very, very deep form of humility, you know, to know that like, hey, there's somebody that's probably better than me for that position right now.
Absolutely. And, you know, and my pastor knows he can come to me and with somebody and I will find the right person to help them at this point. It's not that I'm done, you know, it's like, hey, no, still reach out and I'll find out who I can, you know, get to help them. But I think, you know, what people really need to know is just, you can do it. Just you just have to ask for help. And that's the hardest thing for so many people is to ask for help.
And my opinion around that is because you get looked down on for it. And that's, you know,
do you really?
Well, that's the mindset, right?
Yeah.
Like that's, I think what our culture has created. Like, you know, dude, I'm sorry, but last time you watch a movie, like the alcoholic in the movie, unless it's a movie about an alcoholic, the alcoholic cameo in the movie is usually some bum.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And so it's like, unless it's about an alcoholic and their journey or whatever, but that's the mindset, right? So it's like, why would I admit to all of that if you're going to stigmatize me and label me that and stuff me in the corner over there?
Right.
You know, like,
but that's
fuck
not,
that.
And that's not like,
that's
you know,
not,
like Aaron said, that's not what happens.
Exactly.
I mean, you know, so you ask for help, people are like, good for you.
Yeah,
you know, like let's freaking get this done. You know, let's get whatever you need. Let's get you.
See, and that's where it's like, I feel like there's such a huge difference between what we're fed and what we actually live. Right.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And it's like, this is our belief system. Social media feeds us all this bullshit. But you know what? Go start clicking on sober videos. So social media just changed the algorithm. Dude, start clicking on our stuff.
Yeah.
I guarantee you in 2 weeks, you click on only sober things and watch only sober things and anti-alcohol and all this, your entire Facebook feed will be full of it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And, you know, my husband and I were talking the other day, you know, some of the, you know, younger kids, even my daughter's age 20, but even younger, they're not drinking. You know, they're actually, their health is more important to them than drinking and other things. I mean, my daughter rarely drinks, you know, and that's just a new thing. You know, they're making bars where it's like, you know,
the greatest thing ever.
Alcoholic stuff. I actually don't really I don't go buy non-alcoholic beer or anything like that. To me, it's like,
there's alcohol in it.
That's to me, it's still drinking. Like,
well, and
it's still the habit of like,
and it's just, for me, it's like, it was such a slippery slope that it's like, why even play with that?
Yeah.
fire?
I just don't, you know, I'll have non-alcoholic.
Dude, we went so far.
Champagne, grape stuff every once in a while, like New Year's.
We do.
Or whatever,
we do fondue on Valentine's Day every year as a family. And my wife always puts wine in the broth. And I was like, no, I'm not eating that.
Yeah.
You know, like I don't even want to smell that shit.
Oh yeah, like beer queso or tiramisu.
Exactly. Like, dude, I'm not even going to play with that. And that's just my personal preference, right? Like I just know myself well enough to know, like, yeah, that's probably not a good idea.
Right. But I mean, I think once, you know, when, you know, part of your podcast, I love the name Shatter Darkness because it is, I mean, you're shattering that darkness in you. But I think once you really do that, you know, I've become a very successful realtor, you know, and I could never have done that with, you know, I would never work. I would have been at the bars drinking, you know, and
guilty,
you know, whatever, you know, it would have been me. That would have totally been who I was. But, you know, I wasn't that. I built a business and, you know, I've taught other people how to build a business because, you know, I mean, you go, you know, Remax or the group or wherever. I mean, they're going to teach you the fundamentals of how to be a realtor and, you know, those types of stuff. But they don't teach you the back office stuff. They don't teach you the accounting. They don't teach you how to set up your files, how to organize, you know, those things that help you be successful.
Right.
You know, and how to set up that business without failing. And so I taught a lot of realtors that came into to Remax how to do that. You
That's
know,
awesome.
I sat
That's
down
a
with them in
huge
my
value.
office
Yeah,
and-
because I remember getting into real estate and they're like, all right, here's your desk. And I'm like, what am I supposed to do?
Oh, people would sit there with like a deer in headlights. They
Yeah.
had no idea,
That
you
was
know.
100% me.
So I would grab them and be like, this is what we're going to do. Let's talk about
I wish I would have
let's
had
talk
somebody
about
like
a
that.
sphere, you know, and
Because
what that is.
I created so many bad habits that, dude, 12 years into this, I'm still trying to unwind them.
Right.
You know?
So, you know, so it was good, you know, and I did that for a while. But then I moved out to Severance and then I moved my office to my house and I have 6 animals. So I don't really invite
do you guys have like a
people to my house.
acreage property?
We should.
You're like, no, we just live in a single family home, you know?
We do. It's just a 4-bedroom, you know, upstairs, downstairs. My husband hates gates. I have gates everywhere because the German Shepherd and the Lab are downstairs, and the German Shepherd wants to eat the cats, which are upstairs. And then I just brought another cat home who is a complete psycho cat. So there's a gate there, and it's not even
You sound like some of my clients.
Oh my gosh. So we've got the Shih Tzu and the bearded dragon and one cat in one area. We've got another cat in another area. She's a kitten, but like we call him murder kitten, like literally, I mean, like scratches all over me.
Oh my gosh.
But he's the most he just does the sweetest thing and then just turns crazy. He's a tuxedo cat. But he jumped like the 5-foot gate. And so now I have like another gate on top of the 5-foot gate. So now you have to like go underneath the gate. Like, oh, it's a mess. So, you know,
that
gates.
Sounds awesome.
Oh, it's gates everywhere, you know.
When are you guys opening the local petting zoo?
Yeah, right. My husband's like, if you bring another damn animal home.
Dude, my wife was like, I told her, I was like, if you get a dog, I got like a 15-pound weight limit.
Oh, yeah, no, we've got 2 big old
those
dogs.
are dogs, dude.
Yeah, they are. They got 4 legs and they bark. And they are in the canine. Dude, trust me, there has been thousands of people that have tried to talk me out of this. It's not happening. I'm too materialistic.
I'm not a little dog person. I like big dogs.
And you guys, I might lose a little bit of my man card here, but that bag right back there, I want it to be able to fit in there so it fucking bite people. Teach it how to be aggressive.
Right.
If people get too close, it's like
They're
my
like,
little Pomeranian security guard, you know?
Might need
Sure.
a Chihuahua for that.
I'm never going to judge you ever.
I don't care. That's fine. I already know you're judging me.
Nope.
No
I said
judging,
I wouldn't.
no
I said
judging.
speaking into existence.
You know, I
I'm
mean,
never drinking and I'm never judging you.
Well,
Those are my 2 things.
And that's
It's
that's
recorded.
big. That's something big too with the judging. You know, us alcoholics don't judge, and that's something big. In in real estate, you're in real estate as well, and so are you. Is we don't judge. And so I always tell people, like, just be honest with me. Like,
how can you really truly help somebody?
If your credit is shit and you just totally screwed up, or whatever, or you've got this going on, tell me, because we can help you through that.
And that's the thing, is like, I just think again, it goes back to, as a society, we're just so embarrassed by the things that we think that no one else does.
Right.
But everybody does it.
Yeah, and like I tell people, I'm like, guys, my mortgage is way expensive, because my interest rate's 6.75, and I don't have a great big old house. It's a normal house, but you know what? It's expensive, and I've been late before. It is what it is. I would love not to be, because it's going to be hard to refinance. But I'll call Aaron for that. But it's just we're all there. We're all there. I'm paying off credit cards.
And
I'm doing Dave Ramsey right now, trying to get
we
us
just
back
got done
on our feet. And stuff. And so
I mean, that's why I'm donating plasma. And you look at this, right? Like, we wear. So let's just focus on the business thing for a minute. We wear that, right? As agents, people, whatever. Like, we're wearing like, oh my gosh, I must be a failure, right? Like, I'm not successful in this industry. But what we're not looking at is the state of our economy right now.
Right.
How many people are actually in the same boat?
Right.
And it's like, oh yeah, exactly. And so it's like, okay, what you're dealing with is nothing new. So stop putting yourself out here on this island, and it's like, let's look at the reality of these kinds of things. And, I think one of the biggest things that my wife, I struggled with, was responding to life in fear, and I would never look at my bank accounts. I just was like, okay, I'll just go make more money. I'll just go it terrified me to look at our bank accounts. And dude, we're like super close to filing bankruptcy, because of all of those decisions. So it's like, why would I go back and look at those same scenarios with fear again? Right. And so in the situations that we're in, my wife and I are really working through this, where I feel like she's kind of responding to things out of fear, which I understand, you know, and I'm on the other side of that. So it's this dichotomy, right? Like
it's
constantly.
Well, and it's hard. And, you know, my husband's always been like, let's save money. Let's save money. And I'm like, why? Let's go. We need to go on this trip and go have fun. Like,
dude, yeah.
I want to go have fun. You know, I'm not an alcoholic anymore, but I still want to go have fun. I want to
Right.
make memories. I want to do this. And he's like, no, we need to have money in our savings account. And I'm like, okay, well,
like,
you know,
do both?
And he's like, can you please stop transferring? Because I see like 50,000 transfers through like 1 month. Because I'm like, oh, transfer here, oh, transfer here, you know, and you know, so, you know, and that's very stressful for him. You know, very stressful for him. And I'm always like, well, it'll be okay. Like God'll take care of it. It'll be okay. You know, and I've always had that, like, it's gonna be fine. We'll be fine. But now I kind of am seeing where, you know, his Dave Ramsey thing, and he's read the book, and I, you know, I've known about Dave Ramsey stuff, and we do like envelopes with our cash in it. And that's really been helpful because I like, oh, Amazon this, oh, Amazon this,
and
you know.
so helpful, right?
You know,
like,
and to not have it in there, I actually have to go put it in the bank. You know, if I want to deliver my groceries, I got to go put the money in the bank. You know, and so so you know, I think that's kind of been helpful for him to not be so stressful. Like payday was today, and I'm like, I asked him this morning, I'm like, when's payday? And he's like, it's today, and I'm like, oh, really? I usually know about 3 or 4 days in advance because I'm like, we have no money.
Yeah,
right.
So you know, but that's, you know, and we're in a good space, you know, where because I listened to him, you know, finally. You know, that's what I mean.
That's,
you know.
I think if there's people out there and things out there to help people, you have to take that advice.
Yeah.
Because, you know, to both of your points, we're just sitting here listening and thinking about, you know, to kind of loop it back to sobriety a little bit, is we all know these things that we need to do, whether we're ready or not. We know what's out there.
Yeah.
And if you can just stop and just take just some advice or just listen and try to understand it, it's not going to be so scary. I say this all the time. Fear is nothing more than the absence of knowledge. You know, I'm not sure where I picked that up, but, you know, let's just take lending, for example.
Sounds like Wayne Dyer. That sounds like a Wayne Dyer quote.
Oh, is he a smart guy?
Yeah, well,
he's a super smart guy.
Like my faith over fear is
yeah,
you know, that's going to be my next tattoo. Faith over fear.
You know, and what
fear is the bottom line of every single emotion, and you got to get through that. But
the people that, you know, we interact with that conquer that fear are the ones that are successful. You know, there's a dude that I met yesterday, you know, he's been highly successful. He let something slip, and it was a sensitive conversation because, all right, man, let's pull your credit and take a look. And he's, yeah, do it. I want to know. I was like, I know it's bad, but I want to see how bad it really is. And he's going to be fine. He's going to recover way faster and he's going to be more successful, have more wealth and finance and like real estate than the person who's just sitting on the sidelines, just waiting for the market to crash.
Right.
Or whatever, you know, it's the whole fear.
Well, it's intentional, and it's intentionality. You know, it's being intentional about the choices that you make and all of it, you know, just really intentional, like being intentional.
Right.
You know,
well, and not giving up, you know, you know, a lot of realtors don't make it because they give up, you know, and last year was hard. I mean, it was like, busy, not busy, but I mean, I played catch up all year, but I did really well, but I'm like, where'd all that money go? You know, well, inflation, the grocery store, you know, that kind of things, but you know, you just can't give up. Like right now, I'm not actually that busy right now. You know, I've got one thing under contract, but I need more. And I'm, you know, looking at the future going, you better build that pipeline again, you know, or whatnot. But I know that it comes, you know, and it will, if I just keep loving my customers, which I do. But, you know, it's fearful. That's fear, you know, and you can't let that overtake it. Just keep going.
Well, and in those moments too, you usually have a choice, right? It's like we can focus on fear, or we can try to learn the lesson that's being taught in this moment, you know, and then apply it to our lives. Like, okay, well, we sucked at our finances, right? Like I couldn't still to this day, could not tell you how to file my own taxes. You know what I mean? But like we've spent so much money and effort in that space, you know, that it's like, finally we're like, okay, we can't pay this anymore. Like we have to go sit down and figure this out, you know? And so we learned how to do I'll say my wife learned how to do our finances and our taxes and do it really well. You know, it's like
this year is
that's
a great
thing. That's a great skill to have. And had we looked at that situation and been like, well, poor us, you know, like we're never going to get out of this. Then we would have learned nothing. And we would,
over the years.
Dude, and we'd probably be selling our house right now, you know, and it's just life constantly has two avenues that you can go, you know? And I just think that we got so used to taking the easy road, you know, and the easy road is never going to lead you where you want to go.
Nope. No.
You're going to suffer one or two ways.
Yeah, you might as well suffer upwards.
That's
Do you
right.
feel like that's why you? Are you ever afraid of admitting your sobriety to anybody?
Oh gosh, no. I admit it all the time.
Right.
All
and
the
that's,
time.
That's so big of once you, because there's never any reaction. No one's like, well, you're an alcoholic. Can you get away from me?
Dude, I'll tell you this.
Never ever happens.
If
No.
you do get a reaction like that, that person probably needs to go to AA.
I've never ever gotten a reaction like
It's
that.
never
People are
happened.
like,
I
good
haven't
for
either.
you.
Yeah, I
Actually,
haven't
except
either.
for a doctor I just went to, I was so mad. Oh man, I would like to get that like taken off my record. But we didn't even talk about my alcoholism at all. But I deal with chronic pain, and so he was a neurologist. He was talking to me, and I went and read the notes afterwards, and he was like, "This could be happening due to her excessive alcohol abuse in the past." And I'm like, excuse me? I'm like, how do you even know how much I drank in the past? How do you know it's excessive? You have no idea that I'm an alcoholic. You know, you just knew that I had said that I had quit drinking 6 years ago. That's all I said. And he went off and he brought it up 3 times in his notes. Never once did he talk to me about it. Oh, I was so irritated.
Yeah.
So it's like, you know,
Stigma.
oh, I was so bad. I'm like, I am sorry, but this is not from that, but whatever. So, but you know, it's people don't, you know, and like today, you guys are going to have your, you know, sobriety networking group is your for today, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. 2:00. I'll be there.
Nice.
Oh, hell yeah.
I know you're going to see me all day.
It's going to be packed. Dude.
Call this the day of Elizabeth.
is.
I hope so.
It is
I
because,
literally
guys-
went there. I went to the coffee shop and I was like, can we have like 35 people here? And she was like, are you serious? And I'm like, yeah. And she was like, yeah, I think it'll be all right.
Yeah. I mean, and maybe that's where I'll have my next neck break because we're kind of trying to find
It's
one
a great
out.
space.
We're
The room in the
literally-
back
is.
only
We're
holds about
literally
20.
taking over
Yeah.
that entire place.
I've been there a few times. I usually go to Shine Cafe down the
Oh, Shine's so good too.
I know.
It's tiny though. It's like long and narrow.
It is.
You know?
It's not for an event like that, but it's kind of nice to just kind of go.
Oh,
sit and chill.
Shine's
Yeah.
a great place.
Yeah. So, but anyway, you know, you're gonna see there will be a lot of people because you know what? The more and more I have talked about it, even in real estate, there is so many sober people out there.
Mhm.
And even outside of that, it's just, I mean, there's so much curiosity around it too,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and it's just the health benefits alone,
Mm-hmm.
dude, it's unreal. So
and some people do it for the health benefits. I mean,
Yeah.
my broker's been sober over a year
Yeah.
for health reasons, you know, not alcoholic reasons.
God
And-
praise God, the Gen Zers, the young kids, like it's
Yeah.
not the thing. Like you're bringing it up, and I think it's just so cool that you know he brings this up a lot that we're going to be known for the people that kind of change mental health.
Yeah.
We're not talking about whining and crying and
Mhm.
whatever. We're actually talking about you have emotions you have to deal with.
hammering down on the reason, like why these things are there, the lesson behind it all, the purpose in life, you know,
Mhm.
like we're, this is why I met with Bob this morning, you know, is like, we're trying to develop that second phase
Mhm.
of what this thing looks like, you know, and I think that that's it. Like helping people learn how to make better choices, you know,
Right.
and just get farther and farther away from the bottle,
Right.
you know, because physically
Or anything, dude, anything you rely on. Like I didn't mean to cut you off, but
No,
like the bottle, relying on something else other than dealing with your emotions and what's in front of you.
right.
Right.
Put away the phone, get off social media, interact with people, and deal with the stuff that's in front of you.
And I'm still seeing, you know, like my son's constantly on something. And I'm like, just stop walking around watching something. Like put your phone down and be in, because that causes social anxiety, you know,
Totally.
and then, you know, you've got all this stuff, but, you know, so I still see that. But I mean, I really think that some of these young people, I mean, they watch like my kid, like Jordan, she watched, you know, she had some scary times when Jason and I were screaming at each other or, you know, whatnot. And I don't want anybody to think my marriage wasn't good. It was a very good marriage. It's just when we drank together
It's just fueled
too
by alcohol.
much,
I get it.
you know,
Yeah.
there was yelling and, you know, so they saw that she grew up that way and she has trauma, you know, in her brain from that, but they are exactly what you said. People are starting to look, these younger kids are starting to be like, okay, well, I need to get my stress level down. So I'm going to go take a yoga class. I'm going to go hike a mountain or, you know, whatever. They're
to
starting
church.
to take different things.
Yeah.
Yeah. And, you know, I think that's a really important thing. And, you know, we've talked a lot about religion because I think we're all, you know, Christians here, but some people aren't, you know, and that might be another thing that they're like, well, you know, they don't have, like Jordan, my daughter doesn't believe in God. And, she kind of went the science way, and I can't, I'm not one to just sit there and talk her out of it. I would love her to come to church. We talk about God, we pray at the table. She has part of all that, but she's 20 and she's got to make her own way. And I think at some point she will come back, but I can't promise that, and she's her own person, but they don't have that faith over fear. She doesn't have a higher power. It's like, she doesn't have somebody there to help her through that fear, except for, a therapist or
Or maybe
talking
it's
to me or whatnot. But a lot of people are there. And, that's something that I think needs to be thought of. How do we help those people that don't really know what their higher power is?
And that's why I think I keep going back to purpose, because your purpose doesn't have to be spiritual.
No.
And honestly, most of it, it's just service. It's getting yourself out of your own way, and there's there's a billion different ways to do that, and I would encourage people to look at their own pain in their life, because that's probably the place that God wants you to go, or God, I say God, that's probably where the universe or whatever, that's where you're going to be the most effective, right? Because our pain, it's something that we understand, we can relate, it's relatable, like it's experience, and so it's all of those things that you can go, and it's why in alcohol, the alcohol world, it's like, dude, I love it, because we're trying to get this guy, Matthew Bolter, on here in March. And I was playing phone tag with him all week last week. And dude, Saturday rolls around. He's like, hey man, I'm free. Like, let's jump on a call. And like shit was going down in my house. And I'm like, bro, like I can't right now. Like, I just feel like everything in my brain is working against me. Like my kids are screaming, this is going on. And dude, he wrote me this super long text. Like it had to take him 15 minutes. And it just like all the stuff, like beware of this, beware. I've never even met this guy. Never even at this point in time had I talked to him on the phone, but he's an alcoholic and he gets it, right? It's experience, right? And there was so much value in what he told me because he knows.
Right.
He knows exactly what I'm going through, and so that's what I'm saying. Like whatever your pain is in your life, bring it to the surface.
My kids probably that will be the thing they remember from me, as I remember my mom saying, remember who you are. They will remember feel the feels.
Yeah.
Because I am constantly like,
it's okay.
Kid, feel the feels. My son just went through a breakup. He's 12, but 9 months they dated, from 5th grade into 6th grade.
Wow.
And that he was in love with this little girl. And he was angry. And then he would cry, and then he was angry, and then he would cry, and he just comes to me, and my kids know to come talk to me anytime. There's no judging, and sometimes I won't even talk about it. Some of the political things my daughter and I do not agree on, but I will listen to her, and she's fearful of things, and I will listen, and I'm just like, okay,
that's all you can do.
And I'm not going to go in and start fighting her, because why? Yeah. There's no reason to. She needs to feel her feels. And, so that's what my kids that's what they're going to remember growing up, is feel the feels. I'm
that's
like,
awesome.
Feel it.
Don't
run from it.
Exactly. And don't mask it. It's there for a reason. And I've said this in a lot of other past podcasts too, but we need to reframe failure as a culture. Like it's just, there's nothing wrong with it.
You have to fail to succeed.
Exactly. And for my whole adolescent life, I had a successful father, and I was always afraid that I wasn't going to be that,
right.
And I was like defining myself with his success, right? Like my success has to be exactly like his, and it's not like my success probably won't be monetary,
right?
And that's not my metric for success.
Right.
So, and I have to be okay with that, and yeah. So
failure's fiction.
Holla.
There you go.
Yeah. But
yeah, I mean, you do. You have to. If I didn't fail in Terra Vita, I'd still be in property management. Yeah. And
if we didn't fail in alcoholism,
right, I wouldn't be doing what I love, the passion of finding these people homes. And I've sold $1 million homes, but I love selling first time home buyers their $350,000 home. Like that feels so good,
isn't it?
And yeah, and it's it's
fulfilling.
It's just coming up with such creative contracts, working with a lender to be like, okay, well, let's tell me your whole situation so that we can get you what we need to get you. Yeah. Like it's there, let's do it, and And so, but it's, without that failure, I wouldn't be here.
Yeah.
Yep.
I wouldn't be here doing what I love,
Trauma's a
so
hell of a teacher.
it really is. It really is. But you have to feel the feels.
Yeah.
I agree.
Yeah.
Well, is there anything else that you want to add?
No.
Yeah. What do you want to leave our listeners with?
I think if I had to leave them with anything, it would just be, feel your feels. Don't be scared. Ask for help, and nobody has to know about it. This is an anonymous thing. If you want to come up to any of us, come up to us, talk to us, give us a call, shoot us a text. We're here to help.
And that is true. Like the anonymity in all of it is what you want it to be. Like we've chosen to get on a microphone.
Absolutely.
And share the story. That does not have to be the path that you go. I mean, just make better decisions, you know?
Yeah. There's so much more out there than the life you lead when you're drinking. I mean, it's just so much more beautiful life, more peaceful and serenity. And it takes a while to find that too, but you do find it.
Yeah.
So
well, I just can't tell you. I love the opportunities that I get to meet somebody for the first time, and then sit down and do these interviews. I just instantly feel connected, we're family. So I just want to say thank you for your vulnerability, and your story. I mean, it's so powerful, and you've made some incredible changes in your life. And, we're just really grateful that we got to sit here and talk with you about that.
Well, thank you. Thank you. I appreciate it.
So,
keep going.
Yeah,
I will. I'm going to keep on trucking it. Yep.
So, well, with that, we're going to wrap up this episode. But I just wanted to, one, you can follow us on our socials, on YouTube. It's Shattered Darkness Podcast. Instagram is Shattered Darkness NoCo, which eventually will make all this more seamless. Spotify is just Shattered Darkness. So, we really appreciate you guys supporting us and listening, and we really hope that it's having an impact. Obviously, for us to stay relevant, we need interaction and, feedback and things like that. So we are out there looking for areas to kind of gain that on our own. But the number one way that we can do that is if you guys like, comment, share, leave us questions, email us at shatterdarkness5@gmail.com. I've really been thinking a lot about what the second phase of this thing looks like. Because what I'm feeling right now is, yes, compiling these stories like we talked about earlier is great. It opens up that door of like, oh my gosh, I can relate to you. But we want to go even farther than that, of like, hey, this is kind of what the day in and the day out looks like. So we're not 100% sure what that exactly looks like at this point in time. I have a lot of meetings set up coming up, just trying to figure that piece out. So if you are listening to this and you are feeling something, or you're feeling like you want to get involved, I mean, please reach out to me and or Aaron. And I mean, we're always open, but really our overall vision with all of this is to help people find their purpose, and it's like, I've really asked myself a lot, is it the 501c3? Is it plugging in, giving people money to plug into rehab, which rehab I think is great. The system I think is a little broken. And so I go back and forth on, if we do a nonprofit, then we have to have a board of directors, right? And all of a sudden access to that money becomes harder, right? So it's, are we serving the purpose, right? By doing this, like, are we doing the same things by creating a 501c3, or are we changing, the access to it? So that's something I've really been thinking a lot about. And coming back to really where my heart is in all of this, and where Aaron's heart is in all of this. And, and it's to share what we've learned so far through this process. Right. And then even to go farther than that, as to, show you the day in and the day out of how we're walking our lives, and, interacting with our world, and, staying sober, honestly. And I really, truly feel like today, as I sit here today, I feel like it's purpose, and it's finding a real purpose that's outside of yourself. So, anyways, we'd love to get more feedback. We'd love to get more involvement. We have some really exciting guests coming on here in the next few months. So, I just kind of want to ramble about that a little bit and honestly invite you guys into this because, you know, at the end of the day, we're doing this to change the stigma around all of this, right? And just to create a community, you know, a community of really strong, motivated people. So if you want to be a part of that, let us know. Sorry, I just went on a total rant.
Word, bro.
What do you got?
God bless y'all.
Salutations. Thanks
Thanks for
thank you
having
guys.
me on.
Yeah, thank you, Elizabeth.
Absolutely.
And we'll see you guys next time.